Hello, everybody.
Hello, happy Thursday. I've hardly seen you. You've been in the office all day, plugging away, getting videos and doing voice dialogue stuff for the show tonight.
Right. And when I'm not there, I'm upstairs because there's lots of construction going on. So I've hidden away in a back bedroom and I'm writing. And so we don't see much of each other right now.
No.
Lucky you, hey?
Is it luck?
Yeah.
I don't know. I like seeing your smiling face. You inspire me to work and research more. Okay, I'm kidding.
Wow. That is, let's start off on a high note. What do you think?
Definitely. Let's start off on a high note. Where do you go?
Shoot 'em down, turn around, come on, moan it. Hey, you give me love and I feel alright now. You gotta talk and turn and feel alright, and feel alright. I say yeah, 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 yeah. 'Cause you make me feel so good, so good, so good, so fine, so
I saw that video on social media and I laughed out loud so hard I thought I was going to pee my pants. I said, Chris, we got to play this video. It's a feel-good moment because this is exactly how I feel. And every day I wake up going, no, I'm not going to look at social media. No, I'm not going to post. I'm just going to post normal stuff today. And then inevitably, the truth comes flying out of our mouth and hardcore truth. So that was so indicative of our lives.
I don't have that internal struggle. Oh, maybe let me bring the microphone to my face like a professional. I don't have that struggle because I just wake up and if I don't feel like doing social media, I just go. I was pretty Twitter fighty today, but just going on to, YouTube. Elizabeth Merton, I'm really into her right now. She's a Scottish comedian.
Oh, she's the Scottish tour guy.
Yeah, my name's Craig. Yeah, she's pretty funny. Because it's going to be a heavy show for sure. And bait and switch. Sorry about that. We told you we were going to have one kind of a show.
Yes.
This is not the big show that we were alluding to. But
No.
we've put a lot of effort into this show. So,
unfortunately, we were supposed to have Sean Buckley and Colin Brown on today to discuss a document or documents that we found that are very, very important for Canadians and probably everybody really to know about and discuss.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Sean Buckley last minute, basically yesterday, was it yesterday or Tuesday, had a scheduling conflict come up last minute. And so he was not able to do the show for tonight.
Nope.
But don't worry, we're still going to do the show next week. We've rescheduled it. Sean's schedule has last minute gone haywire. So Daniel Freit, Viva Frey's brother, will be with us because I bet you didn't know that Viva Frey does have a brother who is a lawyer. He's a corporate and commercial specialist and he deals with real estate as well.
Yep.
But seeing as we're dealing with a document that is a contract, he's actually perfect to step into place. And after our conversations with him, he actually knows this document inside and out.
Which
so
is
he's
perfect,
the
yeah.
expert as far as I'm concerned on it. So I'm excited to have him on next week. Him and Colin Brown will be here. Colin's a criminal lawyer, so he'll discuss the documents from a criminal aspect, and Daniel will discuss the documents from a contract corporate law perspective.
Yes, and I'm sure that's good. So we have.
So you stuck with us tonight.
He's lucky. Lucky? I don't know.
Yeah.
So we've started something new. Fortunately, StreamYard has added a new feature where you can do seminars, and that allows you to go to our website and comment. So anybody who's watching now, if you're watching on Cloud Hub or if you're watching over on Odyssey or something else, everybody can comment now, which they never used to. And then we don't have to split the comments on Rumble. You can go right to tfmreport.com and everybody can comment from there.
Yay.
Part of the reason we're doing that is because Rumble's been a little sketchy lately. Facebook's pretty sketchy. Everywhere we are, basically, except for Cloud Hub, and then after the fact, Brighteon is kind of like, we're not sure what's going to happen. So we're going directly to our website, and you can actually chat over on our website, which makes it super cool.
Yay.
Yeah, so so there's that. And then lastly, winter's coming. Make sure you got food. I'm sure everyone's seen Leave the World Behind. One thing that you want to have is food. Garden Towers help you do that. And you can go to our partners page and you can check out Garden Towers. And if you are looking to buy gold and silver, we've got some people who can actually walk you through that and find the best product for you, depending on your needs. So there's lots of stuff over there to help you out. And so many products there that I keep forgetting. There's t-shirts there. There's Tune-Up 66, which are going to help your car make that last longer. And if not, as long as you don't have a Tesla, you're fine.
Teslas blow up anyway.
Yeah, I can. And then the Zelenko products, and we're going to add a new affiliate next week, and that's really exciting. So the Zelenko, Dr. Zelenko was the first guy to ever come up with protocols that helped clear that spike protein. He was the doctor to the presidents, and mysteriously died of old age.
And right now is the perfect time to grab his products because it is cold and flu season. So instead of taking,
Thank you, Michael.
4 to 6 pills, you only need to take 1.
Yeah. So those are for US people only. Zelenko's working out their Canadian end, and we're still waiting for that to happen. Okay, so on to the show. So many things. I want to start with this.
Okay.
Because this is big for me right now, and that is that we broke a record. Everybody, way to freaking go! This is the highest signed petition ever, and I just want to blow the dust off cynicism here. We don't know what the weighting is. It could be like for every person that signs that represents like 100 people, maybe 1,000 people is what I've heard. If that were the case, then 10 times the population of Canada decides that they don't like Trudeau. This is more, we understand this is going to get read out in Parliament, and we understand that what's going to happen, probably nothing. What could come of that? Nothing. But what it is it's a beacon for other Canadians saying, like, this is how many people have had enough of this government. But what it's really going to do is highlight this. And this is something that came up. So bear in mind, this signature has been going strong since it came out. It's been growing and growing and growing. We knew it was going to break the record.
Yes.
So the Canadians, basically, this is our only way, since elections are rigged and polls are rigged, and it's ridiculous. So now we find little ways to get a voice out there, and this petition's doing that. And so Trudeau looks at that and he goes, wow, like 10 times the population of Canada doesn't like me. What would be his response? Of course, to run again.
Oh, well, yes. Did he? Yes. Yes. And yes. I just want to say, congratulations, Melissa Outwater. I am so proud of you. Your wording was perfect. You're playing the game by their rules, because we know we got to go at them at every angle possible. And this is one of the ways to do it. So congratulations, Melissa Outwater, for taking charge, putting the language together, getting an MP to actually back it in the House of Commons. Congratulations, 317,000 signatures, and it's not over yet. We still have another week. So throw those signatures on there. Throw this everywhere. Let's make it the biggest, best petition ever.
Right.
Ever.
Yeah, I get it. We get it. What's it going to do? Nothing. We get that. Forget that. Just go sign. Just go sign and tell everyone to sign, because it's about the numbers at this point, and it's about showing people a message. And that message is that there are enough Canadians now who are fed up with this government, and they are sending a message that, things need to change.
Yes.
Or else. And so Trudeau sees this signature, he sees the writing on the wall, and of course he decides to rerun. We're going to play the video of that because it's half a second of him saying that and then slamming Polly out. Disclaimer: we can't play his voice without throwing up.
Not we, he.
Yeah, I mean, and we've done that before in the studio. It's just a mess afterwards. So I have to augment his voice just to get through it. Sorry about that.
See, people ask me, why do I want to run in the next election? It's because I'm fighting for the middle class. I'm fighting for reconciliation. I'm fighting for climate change. I'm fighting to build an economy that works for all Canadians. I'm running because now is not the time to stop fighting for progress. But the more interesting question to me is, why does Pierre Poilievre want this job? To import far-right populist politics to Canada? To call people's homes shacks and use homeless people as props? To ramp up bullying on 2SL LGBTQI plus kids as a wedge for politics? To cut the programs Canadians rely on, like dental care and child care? To be honest, I don't think he knows the answer to that question, and that's what makes him so reckless. If you want to be Prime Minister, you have to be able to answer tough questions. Poilievre calls his approach common sense. It's absolute nonsense.
Oh, I don't think that was the gotcha he thought it was.
No, it wasn't. And I don't know who wrote his speech,
Yeah.
but maybe they need to, before writing his speech, take a look at what he has done and what he's done recently, especially in the House of Commons, when it comes to answering questions. To throw something like that in there when he can't even do it himself, just ridiculous,
Right.
hypocritical and ridiculous.
And that's nonsense. So I don't know who his joke writer is, but that's, and he has no sense. Like in his pocket, I got a lot of cash. Cash me outside.
No, he doesn't have cash.
Oh no, I got CBDCs, a big bankroll of CBDCs, digital money at the ready.
But you know,
Yeah.
these kind of speeches are just gonna have him absolutely terrorized when he goes out and starts, on the campaign trail, because this is the stuff that clowns are made of.
Well, but so out of touch. The Liberals have got to be looking at this signature count, and it's bigger than the last one, which just broke the record, which was 284, I believe, and that was calling a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. They're saying you need to put an end to the Middle East. You need to put a peace in the Middle East, and what's more important is getting rid of Trudeau. That's more important.
Because that's what Canadians care about. We care about what's happening at home in our own country. It's wonderful that people care about what's going on in world politics, because we should care about what's going on in world politics, because it does have a domino effect down eventually onto our country.
Yeah.
But we got to fix our own country first before we can fix any other country. We need peace in our own country. We need unity in our own country. We need our vets not to be starving on the streets and left out in the cold. We need drugs to come off our street. We need the homeless to be homed. We need every child matters. Every child deserves to have a roof over their head and food in their bellies and clean clothes to wear that actually fit them. And our government seems to have forgotten that. All they care about is Ukraine and Israel and Palestine, and all these other countries get a wealth of our taxpayer money. And then when we ask for something, it's, we don't have the cash. We don't have the money. Sorry, we can't afford to.
Well, immigrants got $796 million in hotels and meals apparently last year. So I think there's that closer to home.
Congratulations to the immigrants. Again, what about Canadians? It's the Canadians' tax-paying money that paid for those immigrants, but did not pay for proper systems here at home, did not pay to look after our vets who have basically sacrificed their lives and their families to look after us. And we can't return the favor by putting them in a nice home with proper medical care and pharmaceutical care and natural remedy care. We can't do that. Come on. It's disgusting how we treat our own people.
Yeah.
We're always doing the virtuous thing by looking after everybody else but the Canadian, and that's got to stop. And this
That's
petition that
intentional.
Melissa Outwater put together, that Michelle Ferrari is sponsoring, puts that in writing. So
Mhm.
congratulations. Keep going. I hope it gets another 100,000 signatures in the next week. I would love to see that. And we did put in a call to find out how many, like, when you put a signature to a petition, what does that actually equate to in government terms? Because we know they always inflate the numbers. So what does one equal in terms of a petition when the governments are talking? Is it 10? Is it 100 people? Is it 1,000 people? I think it's 1,000, but don't quote me on that because I don't know for sure.
So if it's 1,000, it's 10 times the population of Canada wants Trudeau to get out. And he thinks, oh, well, that's my signal to rerun. It's, yeah, even the rest of the Liberals have to be going like, even my narcissism is getting foreshadowed on this one. Not mine, Liberals.
Liberals.
Yeah, speaking as a Liberal, and yeah, so that's why my brain was foggy on that one. Okay, so
Do you want to stay with the government? I can bring up Bill C-35.
yes, of course I do.
Okay, so while we've all been entertained with what's going on overseas in other countries and with, Trudeau's amazing speech writing skills or speech delivery skills, what we missed, which was brought to my attention in one of the social media chat groups I'm in, was Bill C-35. Now, on the surface, Bill C-35, who was sponsored by Jenna Studs, she's the Liberal from the Canada Carleton region, and she has an interesting resume in different groups that she's on, including the Canadian European Parliamentary and Canadian France Interparliamentary Association, et cetera, et cetera. This was introduced on June 19th, 2023. So this year. So this bill has gone through relatively quickly. And bills that tend to go through relatively quickly most often are not in our favor. Okay. So on the surface, Bill C-35 is called an Act Respecting Early Learning and Childcare in Canada. Sounds fantastic. We should be looking after our children. They're the most vulnerable. Well, it has made it all the way through the House of Commons. All three readings were approved and moved on. It moved into the Senate. And on December 7th, it went through third reading and was completed. Now, there is a recommendation or amendment that they made to it. And so it's been passed back to the House for their comment. But they'll probably put it through. And what concerns me about Bill C-35, which is why I thought it deserved to be talked about, is that it mentions the UN in here. And again, it's taking away parental rights to decide for their own children where they get taken care of. And depending on where they get taken care of will depend on whether you receive subsidies to help for your daycare. But also, the daycare situation must adhere to UN standards. So I've highlighted just a couple little things in here that I wanted to read for you guys. Because like I said, on the surface, it sounds fantastic until you actually dive in. And, I pulled up the UN's Convention on the Rights of the Child to see what exactly does it talk about. Anyway, it says, whereas the Government of Canada is committed to continuing to work in collaboration with the provinces and Indigenous peoples on a Canada-wide early learning and childcare system that contributes to meeting the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, to implementing the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, that's UNDRIP, and to meeting Canada's international human rights obligations, including those under the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. So we have a bill that has gone through the House and gone through the Senate that 100% is based on the United Nations bills and declarations. Not on what Canadians want, but on what the International Organization of the United Nations wants. It continues, whereas the Indigenous Early Learning and Childcare Framework, which was co-developed by the Government of Canada and Indigenous people, sets out the principles to guide all interested parties in achieving the vision that all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis children and families are supported by a comprehensive and coordinated early learning and childcare system that is rooted in Indigenous knowledge, cultures, languages, and led by Indigenous peoples. So again, if your child is going to an Indigenous daycare that supports Indigenous language and Indigenous learning, you'll be subsidized. Otherwise, you won't be. And again, whereas the Government of Canada is committed to achieving reconciliation with First Nations, the Inuit and the Métis, through renewed nation-to-nation Inuit Crown and government-to-government relationships based on reconciliation of rights, respect, cooperation, and partnership. So again, this has to do with reconciliation and UNDRIP and United Nations. Whereas the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada's calls to action calls for the federal, provincial, and Indigenous governments to develop culturally appropriate early childhood education programs for Indigenous families. Indigenous appropriate. Interesting wording, or culturally appropriate, sorry. Whereas the Government of Canada is committed to upholding the right of Indigenous peoples to be consulted in order to obtain their free, prior, and informed consent for legislation pertaining to Indigenous children. So, as a parent, you have to subscribe to the United Nations declarations, and you have to subscribe to only the child care facilities that the government says subscribes to the United Nations declarations or UNDRIP in order for you to be subsidized, or in the case of Indigenous, free childcare. Other than that, you're not supported. And not only that, but they're going to put together a National Assembly, National Association Committee, I believe it's called. And that committee is going to be paid dollars for their work above and beyond their already government salaries. They're also going to be covered under the benefits and insurance policies for their job. They must meet at least 4 times a year. And it's the King's Privy Council that gets to appoint the members. So, hey, if you're Trudeau's friend, you get another job that gets another paycheck. And it doesn't necessarily involve parents. And in fact, parents' views and their choices don't even come into play. Only if you subscribe to UNDRIP and the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child and the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights will you get subsidized. But don't worry, you can make $1 million a year and you'll get subsidized too. But they will include lower income people, which is what it specifies. It's equality for all, as long as you subscribe to these beliefs. And if you're a single mom, you must subscribe to this, because it actually says that we want enable parents and guardians and tutors, particularly mothers, to reach their full economic potential, which contributes to a strong economy and greater gender equality. So moms, they don't want you staying home with your children anymore. They want you in the workforce, and they want your children in United Nations funded, based ideology daycare centers in order for you to be subsidized.
Mm-hmm. You go work, sister comrade.
We all should have a problem with this bill C-35.
I do.
All of us.
I vote nay. Let's just make it easy in the next election. If the person you're thinking of voting for is a member of the Privy Council, vote no. Against, just no. No more Privy Council people.
You know, they keep trying to tell us that the Privy Council is really just a ceremonious type council, and that's it. They plan parties and that's it.
Lies.
But they lie. The Privy Council, we should really do a show on the Privy Council,
We should
a
do a show on
deep
the
dive
Privy
on it.
Council. Talk to Jason.
Because the Privy Council has so much more control than we know. They basically rule everything.
Right.
And now they want to rule your children and where you as a parent get to put your children in order to be funded or to be able to take part in this. You don't get a say. And it says that if you're putting your children in a for-profit home, so anyone who runs a home daycare that's considered a for-profit daycare, you don't get subsidized. It's your only income, and you may run everything by the books, and you may be fantastic, but you don't count. You don't count.
Unless you sign on to globalism.
Unless you sign on to globalism. Yeah.
Yeah, which we'll be talking about a lot tonight. We're going to run a couple videos, maybe one more video. The show is called The New Order of the Barbarians, so we'll get into that. What that is a 4-hour tape. Just hold. We're not going to run the whole 4 hours tonight. We're going to do this in bits. And so the premise is that it was a man who was talking about a talk that was given in the 1968, I believe. You want to hold on for that because there's so much information on here, and I'm trying to edit stuff out so we can get the audio down to a reasonable size. And the stuff I was cutting out was very little ums and ahs. Really, there's so much in here, and he lays things out 20 years ago, 30 years ago now.
Yep. No,
40 years ago.
More than that. 60. I think he said 69. That he was at a conference in 1969 where the gentleman was talking.
He was from 1988, so that's like 40 years ago almost now. And he's laying out exactly what's happening now. And we have another video just after that lays it out from the year
2001 or 2002.
So, and talking about stuff that we had just started talking about 6 months ago, like not us, but us collectively. Things like gold dust, which was just fairly new on a lot of people's radar. Ooh, I like gold dust,
I had a shiver. Somebody must have stepped over my future grave.
But first, let's watch Riley Gaines getting into it with the senator.
I love Riley. Go girl.
It's disappointing to me that although the title of this hearing implies a much needed discussion, we're likely going to be forced to listen to transphobic bigotry. Because actually protecting female athletes in Title IX is important.
Of course, there is a place for everyone, regardless of gender identity, regardless of sexual orientation, regardless of race or what sports you play. There's a place for everyone to play sports in this country. But unsafe, unfair, and discriminatory practices towards women must stop. Inclusion cannot be prioritized over safety and fairness. And Ranking Member Lee, if my testimony makes me transphobic, then I believe your opening monologue makes you a misogynist. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gaines. I now recognize Ms. Perry for her opening statements.
Good afternoon, Chairman McLean, Ranking Member Lee, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. My name is Sarah Parshall Perry. I am a senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation. As a former varsity athlete, the mother of a girls varsity athlete, and former senior counsel for civil rights at the Department of Education, I have, as the saying goes,
Madam Chair, excuse me, I move to have the gentlewoman's words taken down.
Yes. She just couldn't
The committee will suspend.
She just could not let it go. She was sitting there in that seat, fuming the entire time because this uppity white woman
Riley
told her,
called her a misogynist.
That's right. Called her, she just cannot let that go.
Madam Chair, she's engaging in personalities.
Can I just ask how it's fair to be called transphobic?
There's a
Thing.
I would say men disguising themselves as women are engaging in personalities.
Order.
hang on. Order. Let's get a ruling. The chair.
So she's just basically, hey, that was a personal attack, but she's like, she started it, right?
What's good for the goose is good for the gander.
So,
People in glass houses shouldn't throw rocks unless
can
they expect
dish
the
it
rocks to
out.
be thrown back at them.
Yeah, so you can dish it out. You can't take it. So they're deliberating. They're all gathered around her, deliberating.
Having a conference with her, I'm sure about the language she has chosen and how she started this meeting. Here we go. Now telling her exactly how she should word this.
Yeah.
Okay, I move to withdraw the point of order.
Yeah, there you go. Way to go, Riley.
With to withdraw the point of order. Oh.
Yeah, slam dunk. emotional damage. Okay,
She
so
went home and drowned her sorrows in a few drinks, I'm
she
sure.
did, yeah. So where is the state of Canada and the world right now? They are trying to link climate change issues with the population. We know that. We've played clips where they dance around it. We've played clips where, what's her name? Who's the ape lady? Jane Goodall. She's
The ape lady.
that's right. Talking about depopulation. Bill Gates kind of dances around it and then kind of pokes it. So we know it's about depopulation. But how are they going to get there? Well, hey, good on you, Daily Mail, for speeding up the plans here. Daily Mail. Now scientists say breathing is bad for the environment. Gases we exhale contribute to 0.1% of the UK's greenhouse gas emissions. So there you go. You are a danger to climate. We've debunked this, I don't know how many times, right?
But this tells you, this is your warning. They're now coming after you. They first said the cows were a problem with their flatulence.
Yep.
They came after the cows.
Yep.
You know, they said the sun was a problem. So they've now been going after the sun by blocking it out with the chemtrails. And now you are the problem. They are coming after you. Whatever you do, do not line up for those flu and vax shots or whatever other shots are coming down the pipe. Don't do it, and start reading the labels on all of your food products, please.
So there it is. I mean, you just watch. You watch Logan's Run coming. You're getting old. Do the right thing for the planet. Get rid of yourself. Oh, you're depressed. Do the right thing for the planet. Oh, you can't make any money. Do the right thing for the planet.
Yeah, and don't you have there another thing? If you're old, do the right thing for the planet. We've got maids for you. In fact, let's have a party so we can talk to you about maids. Come for some tea and coffee and light refreshments as we do as seniors having fun.
So yeah, people are saying, well, this event has gone viral, assuming that she's giving okay for maid. Is that true? And good question. No, that is incorrect. The speaker today is a seasoned priest with many years as a hospice chaplain and is currently doing a PhD in maid. So she's not promoting it at all, but she's doing it and she's getting her PhD.
And she's a priest.
Yeah, she's going to talk about the legal and spiritual aspect.
I thought suicide was against the Catholic religion. She's a priest.
Who knows anymore, right? Maybe Catholics, maybe Anglicans have a problem with it. I don't know. The United Church, they're just, just be gaying off yourself. I don't know.
Come, join us for your last tea.
Oh, that's clever, Hashem.
Made in Canada, not made in Canada. I like it, Hashem.
There's a certain prime minister who needs a good speechwriter. Maybe you should apply.
There you go.
No nonsense jokes though. That was awful. Yeah, so we've talked several times about the idea that we're winning. So if you talk to anybody, everyone will say this is a spiritual war and it's an info war. And we are winning this info war.
We are.
There are people who are just, they're cleaning their guns. I should clarify that.
I was gonna say, what is this?
Cleaning their actual guns, not metaphorically. There are people who are just chomping at the bit. They want to get it done, but they will also, even they say this is an info war. And we've said several times, the SDG goals are backwards. Guterres, Vice Secretary General of the UN, is freaking out. They have an emergency summit. And now Klaus Schwab.
This anti-system movement, what we are seeing is a revolution against the system. So fixing the present system is not enough. Now there is, of course, an anti-system, which is called libertarianism, which means to tear down everything which creates some kind of influence of government into private lives. It's dismantling the system.
The system's coming apart. What about this? Who will save the system? Who will think about the system? Do you not see that you're taking down the system, people?
You know what? Tear it down faster. That's what I have to say. It's not being torn down fast enough. It needs to be torn down, and it needs to be revamped, and it needs to be revamped properly in favor of the people. The police and the military are not put into place to protect the government who rules over the people. That system is gone. It's done. It's over with. The people need to rise up and tear it down. Otherwise, we're going to be just like China, afraid to talk, afraid to smile, afraid to tell truth, afraid to just even read a book for fear that it may throw you in jail and lock down the rest of your block.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so knowledge is power, and we find that all knowledge is censored and heavily redacted and yada, yada, yada. So we've been taking to finding information that you can't find everywhere. So we've been digging deep and digging hard, and we've been going back to the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. It looks like around 1990 was when the info streams started getting siphoned and squeezed.
And the Wayback Machine started being pilfered.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes things go missing on the Wayback Machine now, which is concerning.
Sometimes on your own machine.
Yeah, I've had a couple of things go. Yeah, I mean, we won't get into that right now. Freak people out. So we've got what's called the New Order of Barbarians, and I'm just going to read that here.
Did you want to talk about this while you're on information being pilfered, or no?
No, I was going to play it in clips if it comes up.
Oh, okay,
but
sure.
Since my my file went down.
Kaputs?
Yeah, I'm not sure we're even going to get there. This is a transcript of 3 tapes on the New World or New Order of Barbarians, referred to on the tapes simply as the New World System. Tapes 1 and 2, recorded in 1988, are the recollections of Dr. Lawrence Dunnigan of a speech given in March 20, 1969. So in 1988, he's talking about what he was told in 1969. And this was given by Dr. Richard Day of the Pittsburgh Pediatric Society. So Dr. Richard Day was a pediatrician. He also helped co-found Planned Parenthood. So he was a globalist, and he was into depopulation, and he's one of the founders of Planned Parenthood. So that should tell you something right there. Tape 3 was recorded on October 10th, 1991, and features an interview with Dr. Dunnigan with Randy Engel, National Director of U.S. Coalition for Life. Don't need to read that. We're not going to get that tonight. Dr. Richard Day taught at the Mount Sinai School of Medicine in New York from 1968 until he retired in 71. Earlier, he'd been National Medical Director of Planned Parenthood, 65 to 68, professor and chairman of the Department of Pediatrics in the University of Pittsburgh, professor and chairman of the Department of Pediatrics in Downstate Medical School in Brooklyn, and associate professor of the College of Physicians and Surgeons, Columbia University, 35 to 53. He died in 89. So he died in 89, right after Dunnigan started revealing what he told. Coincidence. Dunnigan was formerly a student of Dr. Day at the University of Pittsburgh and was well acquainted with him. Though not intimately, he describes Dr. Day as an insider of the order. And although Dr. Dunnigan's memory was somewhat dimmed by the intervening years, he did the best to recollect what he could. So the reason we like this old information is because it talks about what's happening today. And back in the 80s, 1988, they weren't talking about medical assistance and dying. And so when they start talking about those things 40 years in advance, you know, Kevorkian hadn't even come around until like the mid 90s, I don't think. And he was the first kind of pressure point on that whole thing. Mm-hmm. So they weren't really looking at it as a reality back then. And when they start talking about these things in 88, you got to give it some weight. You got to give it some credibility.
Well, not only that, he was at a conference in 1969. So that's where the stuff was first introduced to his ears. Yes. And he's just relaying that information in the 80s.
Yes.
So it is interesting for us to do the report card. We'll do our own Agenda 2030 report card to see where they're at based on what they said back in 1969. Did what they say come to fruition? Was it all just conspiracy theory? Was everybody just wearing their tinfoil hats that were trying to warn the world that, hey, this is coming, we need to stop it in its tracks, and the world laughed at those people? Were they right?
Right. So the reason we do this stuff is because the more information we get, the more we understand. Knowledge is power, and the truth shall set you free. So so we just feel like we are doing a good job collectively, of course, at winning this info war. And the more information we can get out there, the more information and the more ammunition everybody has, and they can see they get smarter and smarter and smarter as we go. And the globalists are just getting hammered, and they're losing that narrative, and they know it, right? So that's why they're trying to enact the Marxist phase of a communist takeover right now. That's what's happening. So we're going to be talking primarily, everything's done at a population, and that is their excuse, that they want to depopulate the planet, because that's the only way to save the planet, because if not, we're going to run out of resources and all that. Let's just put that in perspective before we go. The entire population of the planet, where are we at? Just about 8 billion people.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, just about 8 billion people. Now, if you're going to stand them up shoulder to shoulder, just to put this into perspective, like shoulder to shoulder. Now, nobody can live that way, of course, but it's just a good visual for you to understand. So we give everybody 3 square feet. They have a 3 square foot. That's pretty big for a lot of people. You need like a foot and a half. Right?
Okay.
But other people, they could, they'll use the whole 3 square feet. If you took everyone in the world and put them shoulder to shoulder, and put them on Vancouver Island. Vancouver Island is 12,400 square miles. You can get 27,878,400 people in the one per square feet in a square mile. That means you can get 14 million people in a square mile on Vancouver Island. So the math works out that you could get the entire population of the world on Vancouver Island standing shoulder to shoulder, and you could do that 14 times on Vancouver Island. So the entire population could fit on Vancouver Island 14 times. So we're not out of space. Our issue isn't population. Our issue is consumption and solutions. That's it.
That's it.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Well, as we were talking earlier, even you said, if we went back to home cooking and home meals, sitting down with the family in the evenings and got rid of fast food restaurants, there's probably the majority of our issues right then and there gone. Pollution gone.
Right.
All you have to do is drive down any highway or roadway, and you're going to see a Tim Hortons cup, a Starbucks cup, a McDonald's bag, a Wendy's bag, whatever. You're going to see those garbage bags because people consume on the road and then chuck it out their window instead of taking it home, putting it in the garbage. So if people no longer had the option to stop on the road and grab some fast food or a fast coffee, where's all that pollution going to go? It doesn't exist.
So that's the thing. You're worried about food? Immediately cut down fast food restaurants. But McDonald's is a globalist company. It's a WEF company. So are they going to do that? No. Unilever is a WEF company. General Mills is a WEF company. Campbell's is a WEF company. So do you think we're going to do that? No, we're going to lose all that stuff.
Well, we know they're not going to do it because when Canada said you're essential and you're not, well, those fast food restaurants were definitely essential. Mm-hmm. Not sure why, but they were. Mm-hmm. So, and lo and behold.
Not so fast, local farm.
No, the farm is not essential, but that fast food company is. And lo and behold, all those fast food employees are still alive today.
I don't even know how that's possible if they eat their own food, but whatever.
Well, I'm saying they made it through the pandemic. Remember at the beginning when there was no PE, no PPE, there was no gloves, there was no sanitation stuff, that gross stuff. There was, no masks at the beginning.
No mask.
And they all survived. And in fact, they survived for almost a year before they were even allowed to have the shot. Somehow they survived. Well, not sure how well they're doing now that shots became mandatory. But before the shots were mandatory and before the PPE was mandatory, they all somehow survived.
So here, let's get into this. The new order of barbarians. You can go to our website at TFM tfmreport.com/resources. Go to Chris's research packs and you can get New Order of Barbarians. You can also get, we're going to show reference to another document from NASA. You can get that. You've got an ever-growing list of old documents you can grab off there at any time. So let's just get into it.
I want to now describe what I heard from the speaker in 1969, which in several weeks will now be 20 years ago. The speaker did not speak in terms of retrospect, but rather predicting changes that would be brought about in the future. The speaker was not looking from the outside in, thinking that he saw conspiracy. Rather, he was on the inside, admitting that indeed there was an organized power, force, group of men who wielded enough influence to determine major events involving countries around the world. And he predicted, or rather expounded on changes that were planned for the remainder of this century.
So there you have it. This is an inside view by his own account. There are little things in some of these things that we feel are important. It's really important to state that this guy was not like us, looking from the outside, putting all the pieces together and sharing them. This guy was an inside globalist, and that becomes really evident as his talks go along. Okay.
And we actually did snip out so that you wouldn't have to hear everything. But unfortunately, as technology sometimes happens, it happened to us today. And
it got deleted by accident because I wasn't paying attention. But I did clip some of this out.
His purpose was to tell us about changes which would be brought about in the next 30 years or so that an entirely new worldwide system would be in operation before the turn of the century. As he put it, we plan to enter the 21st century with a running start. He said as we listened to what he was about to present, he said, some of you will think I'm talking about communism. Well, what I'm talking about is much bigger than communism. At that time, he indicated there is much more cooperation between East and West than most people realize. In his introductory remarks, he commented that he was free to speak at this time. He would not have been able to say what he was about to say even a few years earlier, but he was free to speak at this time because now, and I'm quoting here, everything is in place and nobody can stop us now.
Isn't that the truth? The way that things have gone, it's more than just the boiling frog in the pot. Mm-hmm. Things have sped up to such a degree that I don't even know what's coming next or where to start or what's more important to focus on than the other. Things are coming at us so fast. And, you know, with the evolution of feminism and women getting the vote and being allowed to have their own bank accounts and forcing them into the workforce, and then inflation going up and the cost of groceries and everything going up. Now women had to go into the workforce instead of staying home and taking care of the children. And now the family is divided and the whole thing works and is predicated on no longer having that nuclear family bond and that sense of community and relationship. If you can divide that up, divide and conquer, then they're well on their way.
So the takeaway on that last section is, again, this is in 1969, and he's saying we are confident with talking about this because our plans are already in place. So I know this part's a little less juicy, but it sets the stage.
One of the statements was having to do with change. People get used. The statement was people will have to get used to the idea of change. So used to change that they'll be expecting change. Nothing will be permanent. This often came out in the context of a society of where people seem to have no roots or moorings. but would be passively willing to accept change simply because that was all they had ever known.
So that makes a lot of sense, because that's what we're seeing now. Take away the foundation, take away the stability, and then you're setting the stage to start filling in that empty cup with other stuff.
Exactly.
Another comment that was made from time to time during the presentation was, people are too trusting. People don't ask the right questions. Sometimes being too trusting was equated with being too dumb. But
And they did that in schools, right? They never wanted you to ask questions. They never wanted you to challenge the teacher. You were to sit there and listen and regurgitate the information given back to you. You were never supposed to ask why. And then it got to the point where people didn't want to put up their hand. They didn't want to put up their hand to answer questions, and they didn't want to put up their hand to ask questions, because then the class was now programmed to tease them for being dumb or tease them for not understanding. Not understanding that actual power or knowledge was power. Mm-hmm. And the more you knew and understood, the more you could question and grow as a person and evolve away from trusting government, away from just taking for granted the words that were said to you.
Mm-hmm. Times when he would say that and say people don't ask the right questions, it was almost with a sense of regret, as if he were uneasy with what he was a part of and wished that people would challenge it and maybe not be so trusting.
See, and that's going to be a common theme. And there's a long-standing, with the truth movement, there's a long-standing theory that globalist Satanists have to say what they're going to do, and they have to broadcast their plans because it's some sort of rule of cosmic permission. I've always kind of not bought that personally. There's some elements of truth to that for sure. I know that firsthand, dealing with dark forces. But at the same time, these people don't play fair, and they don't care about rules. So what makes more sense is they're framing it that they're trying to do right for the planet. They're trying to make the planet a better place. So in order to save the planet, they have to move forward, and you'll see this theme throughout the talk, but they have to move forward with the best possible people, because we have to advance evolution, and you're going to see that. So not only do they provide the problem, but they provide the solution, and those people who are worthy are the ones who get to go forward. And that's kind of the way, and that sets themselves up in their own minds as being heroes and not villains, right? That makes more sense, because nobody thinks they're a villain, right? Some people probably do and love it, but okay.
Another comment that was repeated from time to time, this particularly in relation to changing laws and customs and specific changes. He said everything has two purposes. One is the ostensible purpose, which will make it acceptable to people. And second is the real purpose, which would further the goals of establishing the new system and having it. Frequently he would say, there's no other way. There's just no other way.
Look at how many examples that's true, like MAID. You know, it's compassionate. We don't want people to suffer, but really it's just budget saving issues, right? It's just trying to, you can't afford to fix everybody. You can't afford, now we're doing it with mental health. Now we're doing it with kids.
Well, you know, it's about budget issues and no longer about pain and suffering when they open it up from only the terminally ill, with a doctor's confirmation that, yes, there's only a limited amount of time and there's no way to reverse that, to, hey, you know what? You're poor. You're living on the streets. Why don't you do us all a favor? Sign up for MAIDs.
It's the right thing to do.
It's the right thing to do.
You're seeing that and you're seeing it with the transgender movement. You know, it's all about compassion and making sure they don't bully, but basically they're confusing kids and smashing their personalities, separating into they and them, and perpetuating schizophrenia.
And stealing their ability to be fertile in the future.
Robbing their identities. It goes on and on and on. So we're always seeing these duality rules being put in place. You know, we want to make you safer, so we're going to take away your guns. And you want to make sure that you're safer when you come to get the rest of us, right? And so yeah, I mean, that's the dual purpose thing is something that everybody's figuring out by now.
Said the population is growing too fast. Numbers of people living at any one time on the planet must be limited, or we will run out of space to live. We will outgrow our food supply, and we will overpollute the world with our waste. People won't be allowed to have babies just because they want to or because they are careless. Most families would be limited to 2. Some people would be allowed only 1. And the outstanding person or persons might be selected and allowed to have 3. But most people would allow to have only 2 babies. That's because the zero population growth is 2.1 children per completed family. So something like every 10th family might be allowed the privilege of the 3rd baby. To me, up to this point, the word population control primarily connoted limiting the number of babies to be born. But this remark about what people would be allowed and then what followed made it quite clear that when you hear population control, that means more than just controlling births. It means control of every endeavor of the entire world population.
So he's got it right. He's got it right. This has nothing to do with the planet and saving people. This has everything to do with control. We all know that. You know, because if you really care about the planet and the environment and overpopulation, why not include the people in this? Why not include the people and say, how can we come up with solutions and let's work together to do that? They have no desire to do that. They have just a desire to put their boot down on people and tell them what is.
And we know the UN started from the conference on world depopulation. So from as early as we can find so far, 1954 was when they started talking about world depopulation on an international scale. And they've just been figuring out a way to con the rest of us into doing it ourselves.
Right. Yeah. 1954 was the first world population.
World depopulation
conference, and about then was when Club of Rome was set up as well. So there was definitely a definitive let's get things going in the 50s, and it amped up in about the 70s, and after about 80s, maybe 90s, you stopped seeing information readily available to you. So it started disappearing. Yeah.
Population control, a natural next step then was sex. He said sex must be separated from reproduction. Sex is too pleasurable and the urges are too strong to expect people to give it up. Chemicals in food and in the water supply to reduce the sex drive are not practical. The strategy then would be not to diminish sex activity, but to increase sex activity, but in such a way that people won't be having babies. And the first consideration then here was contraception. Contraception would be very strongly encouraged, and it would be connected so closely in people's minds with sex that they would automatically think contraception when they were thinking or preparing for sex. And contraceptives would be made universally available. Nobody wanting contraception would be find that they were unavailable. Contraceptives would be displayed much more prominently in drugstores and right up with the cigarettes and the chewing gum out in the open rather than hidden under the counter where people would have to ask for them and maybe be embarrassed. This kind of openness.
So that, you know, back then, I mean, well, so what were they planning on doing? You could get condoms, but you had to go up to the pharmacist and ask for them.
Yeah.
So the idea was to remove that shame and that embarrassment and make it really super easy. What happened around that time in the 60s? What happened? Well, the sexual revolution happened.
Woodstock happened.
It exploded, and that was the start of it.
Yeah.
That was the start of first was that, and then the 70s saw the rise of, you know, the gay community coming up, and then the 80s, we know what happened in the 80s. and for those of you who are too young, the AIDS epidemic was all encompassing in the 80s. So back then you would never dream of living with somebody. Back in the 50s, you would have to get married. You wouldn't dream of, if you had sex outside of marriage, the woman, and you didn't have a condom, she got pregnant, she was shipped off to a farm somewhere, to an uncle's
or
farm.
a church or somewhere else, and
so she
baby
could have
was
the baby.
taken away, and she would return from her trip away, her schooling abroad.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's better, but at the same time, 12-year-olds having abortions isn't a pleasant alternative to me, right? So, we have gone off the rails as far as sex goes. There doesn't seem to be any limits anymore. So where's the healthy mix? Shame and hiding and all that stuff might not be the best approach, but having some rails on the thing so the train doesn't go straight off the tracks is not a bad idea, in my humble opinion.
Was a way of suggesting that contraceptives are just as much a part of life as any other item sold in the store, and contraceptives would be advertised. And contraceptives would be dispensed in the schools in association with sex education.
You remember that? I remember when that happened.
Yeah.
It was the late 80s.
It was the late 80s.
And that was so controversial, scandalous. They were putting condoms in there because they were sending a message to the kids that the adults said, it's okay. You go right ahead. We're going to provide the condoms for you.
What's crazy is that this is it was a really controversial time at it, because I remember the argument was, well, the kids are going to do it whether the adults say it's okay or not, whether we teach them about abstinence or not, they're going to do it anyway. So we might as well give them the way to protect themselves without carrying around the shame or embarrassment of having to go to the pharmacies. But what people forgot was that there's an emotional attachment when you have sex, hence the shame and the guilt and the embarrassment. And if you're guilt or embarrassed or shamed to go and even ask for the stuff, then maybe you're not quite mentally ready to be having the sex. Now, I can't speak for people who grew up in the 50s. I only can speak for myself. And, porn and sexual content was not readily available.
No.
So at the age of 12, our sex education was the health classroom, the gym. That's when I learned about sex. And obviously your body's changing and it's doing all kinds of crazy things. And now you go, oh, that's what, all right. Now it makes sense why 12-year-olds are having sex, because they've just been told and instructed on how to do it, what it means, what would be pleasurable, what would not be pleasurable. But hey, here's a condom. It really wasn't talked about, hey, don't do it. And if you're giving them the manual on how to do it, my guess is quite a few of them are going to try it.
My sex ed teacher, I was in a private school, so it was all boys back then. So it wasn't awkward, but my sex ed teacher, I remember him saying, like, if you're worried that she has some sort of STD, then go and have a shower immediately afterwards. It's probably not going to help, but it might help a little bit. And then he pauses. He says, but I might want to caution you that if you are having sex with somebody that you think you should have a shower afterwards because she's that unclean, then maybe that's not the best life choice. And I remember teachers who were kind of injecting, like, moderation, abstinence. We used to teach abstinence a long time ago.
They used to teach it, but they stopped teaching it.
Right. You're correct, Hesham. I think we mentioned before in the year 2000, while we are looking at Y2K, the songs, the top, the pop songs changed from love and relationships to sex and partying. So go and track it out. But the top hits, the top 10 hits of every month, track it out from before and afterwards. Go have some fun on Billboard 100.
Well, and we know with the Sochi agenda right now, they're teaching kids about sex at the age of 5. 5-year-old doesn't even understand the word sex, let alone is thinking about sex.
Yeah.
And yet we're shoving it into their little brains as though it's something that's important for them to know at the age of 5.
Yeah.
So he is absolutely correct when he says it's time to normalize, or that part of their plan was normalizing sex, getting them to have as much sex as possible. And in fact, some of the Soji stuff that we saw was talking about encouraging having their first sexual experience before the age of 12.
Yeah.
So exactly what he said is exactly what's happening in today's day and age.
The sex education was to get kids interested early, making the connection between sex and the need for contraception early in their lives, even before they became very active. Many cities in the United States by this time have already set up school-based clinics, which are primarily contraception, birth control, population control clinics. The idea then is that the connection between sex and contraception introduced and reinforced in school would carry over into marriage. Indeed, if young people, when they matured, decided to get married, marriage itself would be diminished in importance.
So we're gonna get close to stopping here. There's so much. If you want to go and get spoiler alerts, go to the website, go to resources, Chris's research packs, and go find New Order of Barbarians. You'll find this kit here. Over the course of 4 hours, we'll be plugging through this, over the course of the next few shows. Yeah, but he talks about how they're introducing drugs and drug addiction, how they're introducing MAID.
There's so much that he talks about.
And he talks about how they're going to trick people into thinking they're older than they are, so old people want to get MAID. Like it gets deeper and deeper and deeper as we go. One of the things for all you Christian people out there, one of the things he talks about is that they've been slowly changing the Bible over time. We've tracked a few changes. We'll get into that later, but just saying like they're diminishing religion, they're diminishing like spirituality and faith, and they're doing it by, they've been systematically changing the Bible over the course of 40, 50 years now. And they do it sort of word by word, and once you get used to that, they change another. They
delete verses, they change locations, they change meanings.
Right. So I think because this is so long, we're gonna cut it at Sex in Schools.
Yeah.
But again, go and download the transcript from that. I'm gonna probably put this up on Brighteon. So if you're really into it and you want to listen to the whole 4 hours, you can go right ahead. This is getting harder and harder to find. So I'm gonna go stick it up on Brighteon, and they're gonna protect it there. So the thing, though, is when you speed up your plans, and in the year 2000, when you wanted to get to where you're at by 2024, and you speed it up by 4 years, probably because I had Trump threw a wrench in the works or something, people get smart, and they go to a psychological warfare school, and they get intensive training for 3 years, and then they can see everything that's going on. CNN's lost the narrative. This Vivek is coming up pretty fast. Mm-hmm. CNN hosted this event with Vivek, and they completely lost the narrative. And I think what we want to listen to here is listening to the audience. Listen to the audience reaction. This clip is a little longer, so.
But he calls it out.
He does call it out, and I'm not sure. He seems to be playing a character on our side right now. So,
but we've seen the flip. Look what just happened. Was it
Malay? Yeah. With Malay. He's like, I'm going to do this and this and this. Flip flops.
As soon as he got elected in, bam. You know what? I'm not going to pull out of the Paris Accord. You know what? I'm not going to pull out of the UN. You know what? I'm not going to pull out of that WHO treaty.
CBCC's central banking can't go. Turns out it can't go. And guess who was visiting inauguration? Zelensky was there. So he threw one over on the Argentinians because obviously they've had enough.
Which is exactly what the BBB party did in the Netherlands.
Right.
They were all about the farmers, and we're going to save the farms, and we're going to stop the expropriation of land, and we're here for you. They got voted in, and what did they do? We're taking your land, farmers. You don't need it. We do. So are these people on our side, or are they playing a character? We won't know until they get voted in what they're going to do. But if they are career politicians in any way, shape, or form,
and they're in the Privy Council,
I say there's a big old question mark on whether they're one and the same, still part of the unit party, just a different face, same shit, different pile, or are they really for the little guy?
So Netherlands got duped, Argentina got duped, but it's okay. We won't get duped because we've got Polyev.
All right, play Vivek. Let's hear from him.
About something that you said at the debate last week. You used the phrase inside job to describe what happened on January 6th. The next day, Capitol rioter Alan Hostetter highlighted your comments at his sentencing. He is going to prison for 11 years. Hostetter threatened members of Congress. He brought a hatchet, knives, pepper spray, stun batons, tactical gear to the U.S. Capitol. Are you concerned that a convicted felon like that is now promoting your comments in court?
So here's my concern, Abby, and I want to tell you guys where I'm at. If you had told me it's close to 3 years ago that January 6, 2021 happened, if you had told me 3 years ago, back when I was a biotech CEO, not steeped in this world, I was just consuming passive media, but was focused on my world of developing medicines. If you had told me that January 6 was in any way an inside job, the subject of government entrapment, I would have told you that was crazy talk. Fringe conspiracy theory nonsense. I can tell you now, having gone somewhat deep in this, it's not. I mean, the reality is this. We do have a government, first of all, we have to acknowledge, that has lied to us systematically over the last several years about the origin of COVID-19, about the Hunter Biden laptop that we were told was false by 51 CIA experts and otherwise before we now know that it was true. You can go straight down the list, the Trump-Russia disinformation collusion hoax, all of it. Now we come to January 6th. The reality is we know that there were federal law enforcement agents in that field. We don't know how many. I think it's shameful. If I may finish just answering.
Well, let me
I'm
going to go ahead and interrupt you here because
I know the establishment doesn't approve of this message. I know this, but we should be able to talk about this.
You're saying that there were federal agents.
This is important to talk about.
You are saying there were federal agents in the crowd on January 6th.
Yep.
There is no evidence that there were federal agents in the crowd on January 6th.
So why, before Congress, when pressed on what the number was, they didn't say there were none? They just couldn't say how many there were.
So you're saying that that you have not seen any evidence that there were.
We've seen multiple informants suggesting that there were. We know people were FBI informants who were asked to.
Is there any evidence?
May I just finish this and you can come back and question me?
Well, let me clarify.
I know it's very uncomfortable for you.
I'm going to clarify my question.
I know this is an uncomfortable issue for many people, but we have to do the truth here.
I'm going to clarify my question because I want to make sure that you understand what I'm asking.
I understand this deeply. And I told you, I was with you 3 years ago. I'm not there now.
Where is the evidence?
Yes.
Where is the evidence that the government had a plot,
let's do this.
an inside job?
But no, I'm going to tell you what an inside job is because I'm not
violence on January 6th.
I'm not going to let you put words in my mouth. I'm going to put my words in my mouth. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by that.
Where is the evidence that the government was involved in planning or executing January 6th?
So I'm going to give you hard facts. And if I may, Abby, I know this is going to be a little uncomfortable, but we're going to go through this and you can push back on it after that. And you can push back on that. And let's do this fairly. Why did they suppress footage of now what's been released, 200 hours of footage of shooting rubber bullets into that crowd, shooting tear gas into that crowd? You didn't see that before. You saw what the response was to that. Now you see footage coming out of actually rolling out the red carpet for Capitol Police allowing people in,
again,
right through the front door.
The vast majority of the footage
evidence should have been released before, Abby.
Mr. Ramaswamy, the vast majority of the footage shows police officers being overrun
and I want to talk about one more
by
case.
violent
this is really important.
riders. That's
I'm
what
going to give you some hard facts.
Of it shows.
So here's what entrapment
you
is.
Cherry pick.
I'm not cherry picking. If I may finish, Abby. If I may finish, Abby. I'm not cherry picking.
Examples.
To the contrary. To the contrary. You know who cherry picked? You know who cherry picked? The government.
That is what happened.
The government cherry picked 12 hours of footage. When there was 200 hours of footage. So cherry picking was the government, not me. Release the whole thing. And let me just finish one thing too, because this is super important as a topic.
So
I think this is a civil libertarian issue of our time. Gretchen Whitmer's kidnapping. I want to be really clear on this, because it's the same issue in the same FBI, same even part of the FBI. 3 people who were in an alleged plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer were acquitted at the end of trial because it was entrapment. That is, government agents put them up to do something they otherwise wouldn't have done. They gave them credit cards with spending limits of up to $5,000, encouraged them to buy munitions, plan something they weren't otherwise willing to plan. So much so, and I want people at home to know this, especially CNN viewers to know this, is that one of the jurors went to those defendants and apologized afterwards, gave him a hug, apologized, seeing what the government had put a poor guy up to who had to go to some Mexican restaurant across the street to get hot water. These people were exploited with credit cards up to $5,000, FBI agents putting them up to a kidnapping plot that we were told was true but was entrapment. Same thing with the Capitol Police, people letting them in freely. Many of those people then being charged.
Look,
the government cannot put you up to do something and then charge you for it. That's wrong.
I don't want to have to.
Wrong to the left, or the right.
I don't want to have to. I don't want to have to interrupt you. I really don't. But I don't want you to mislead the audience here or at home.
I think they've been misled by the mainstream media.
They've been misled by mainstream media. And we know from talking last week's show is at MK Ultra that CNN is part of the programming that the US uses. It's one of the medias that they captured way back when. They did a survey to find out, or actually they did an experiment to find out how many media they needed to capture in order to sell their narrative to the American people. And the number was 24. 24 media. Since then, all those big conglomerates, all the global predators have bought up almost every single mainstream media. They now own more than 24, but the experiment they ran back, and I think it was in the 70s or 80s, I can't remember which one, I think it was the 70s, showed that only 24 mainstream media needed to be captured and to red carpet out their narrative for people to believe it and buy it.
Right, and it was in 2014 that Obama signed the bill to allow their military to use psyops against their own people and use the news to do it. So he signed that in. So our war began in 2014. Pretty much everything we've seen tells us that we started this war in 2014, and we're still 10 years later. We're still working through it because we're catching up. So we have one more video to play you, and
you know she's probably going to lose her job because he got out exactly what he wanted to say.
Oh yeah, well,
so good on you.
Live by the sword, you die by the devil. So, so this one, another older video, which was really
early 2000s.
Early 2000s. She picked up this thing from NASA, and again, you can go to our website and you can go to resources and pick up this NASA document that they're talking about. We managed to recover it. It's on the website.
Things that we want to talk about is what we were discussing a little bit ago, and that is the significance of this NASA war document that was found on the NASA website, and the need to urgently get this out in front of as many people as possible because of the content of this document. And it was a document that actually is a PowerPoint presentation by Dennis Bushnell, the chief NASA scientist at the Langley Center. And it was presented in 2001, July of 2001, just a few months before 9/11. And what brought my attention to it and immediately rang some uncomfortable realizations was when we first came across it. It says on the website, Future Strategic Issues, Future Warfare circa 2025. It said the presentation is based in all cases upon existing data, trends, analysis, technologies, no pixie dust. And the entire premise of the document, or the PowerPoint, is about robots, cyborgs, and humans. On page 93, it said, capture, torture Americans in living color on prime time. And that is an unbelievable statement. Then it's followed up by saying terror attacks within the continental United States using binary biologicals take down critical infrastructure. They are going to use an EMP, which is an electromagnetic pulse. They're going to use radiation frequencies against our brains, etc., and conduct serious psy-war and collateral damage and exploitation. On this same page 93, they say exploit CNN syndrome. Now, CNN, of course, is the network, the news media network, propaganda machine, and was set up by the CIA. You can watch the movie called War on stopthecrime.net for all the background information on CNN. On
We're muted. I'm bad at that.
You are really
I'm
bad
really
at that.
awful
Oh
at
my
that.
gosh.
Yeah.
So we were just saying that, she's talking about CNN being set up by the CIA, as their mass psychosis instrument or tool in order to fool the people. And also she mentioned about the terrorist attacks and tearing down infrastructure. What happened? The World Trade Center the Twin Towers, came down, 9/11 attacks. Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda capturing people and chopping their heads off, making demands on the American people.
Yeah.
Like all of this was laid out in this military document that she came across. The plans are there and they have gradually rolled out.
Right. She goes on, let's just talk about it. She goes on to talk about gold dust, which I hadn't even heard of until about a year ago. And that's basically nanos it's in a dust form. It's so small that you inhale it. Now we saw a story today that was electronics in your food. And then they were talking about smart meters and electro pulses,
EMF,
using radiation to fry your brains and take you out that way. And we're seeing all this stuff happen now.
Exactly. Finish the thing. This is Nancy Tavares, by the way.
Page 66. They say increasingly critical are human limitations and human downsides. Humans are too large, humans are too heavy, too tender, humans are too slow, both physically and mentally, and we require huge logistical trains, meaning we cost way too much money to maintain, and humans have rapidly decreasing to negative value. Can you even believe this? I mean, you're hearing this, and it's got to be rather shocking. This is how they're going to attack. They talk also about, on page 9, this is very interesting and horrifying. Humans have taken over and vastly shortened evolution. They're going to direct evolution. They believe, the bankers, the global elites, believe that they have accomplished immortality. And they're doing that, again, keeping in mind that this entire document is about robots, cyborgs, and humans. They've already mapped our brains. We've just recently heard that they can transfer a human brain into machinery. So whenever they tell us that this is a new scientific discovery, we know it's been decades and decades prior to us ever finding out about these things. And they also talk about microdust as a weapon. They say that this micron-sized mechanized dust, which is distributed as an aerosol and inhaled into the lungs, the dust mechanically bores into the lung tissue and executes various pathological missions. They say it's a completely new type of warfare, and it is legal.
It is legal.
Chemtrails.
Well, chemtrails, and that's the gold dust that we refer to. Now we're calling it gold dust, but her micron dust. That's all there. It's all happening. We dug up.
And transhumanism.
Yep. So
which
she's talking
is
about all
on
that.
our federal government website. Biodigital convergence. It's right there.
Yeah.
So this is early. I think the document was 2001. And I think she did the interview 2001 2002, early 2000s anyway, shortly after she came across this document. But they're talking about biodigital convergence. They're talking about EMF. They're talking about smart meters. They're talking about mass psychosis. They're talking about terrorism. They're talking about using the media as a weapon against us. They're talking about chemtrails and filling our lungs with air particles, air or microdust or gold dust. Like, and it's happening. It is happening. We have witnessed it happening. More and more of us have opened our eyes, especially in the last 4 years, because man, oh man, it's really come to fruition in the last 4 years, everything that's in that document.
Yes. So bottom line is we're still winning this thing right now. But I think learning time is almost over. I think 2024 is going to be a whole different ball game than 2023. 2023, we've been calling the year of the reveal. Secrets have been coming out. People's what they hide in this under the surface has been drawing up like a poison. So you're starting to see people for who they really are. We're starting to see companies. We're starting to see systems. Won't anybody think of the systems? We're starting to see the systems and how they're rigged against us. And we're starting to not fall for the political theater anymore. 2023 was a really big year of the reveal, and a lot of the truth came out. So that makes them freaking nervous. And when you see Klaus Schwab going, these guys are rebelling against us now. Because what do they got? They got skin in the game. They're child traffickers. We know it. We've proved it 1,000 times on this show.
Yeah.
They have committed genocide. We know it. We've proved that 1,000 times on the show. They're narcissistic sociopaths who just want to remake the world in their own image and leave enough just for them and get rid of the rest of you. So once that comes out, there's nowhere on the planet any of them can hide. Unless apparently Argentina again, history repeating itself, reconstructive surgery in Costa Rica for Soxy, but who has a house there, by the way.
So we as Canadians really need to be on the ball. We really need to start asking why. As the professor earlier said, we got to stop being afraid to ask questions. We need to know the answers. We need to question. We need transparency, and we need accountability. Now is not the time to walk away and say, "Oh, Pierre Poilievre's got it. We're good. We can sit back." No. We've seen it time and time again. These politicians that are career politicians, and we think that they're on our side because they say all the beautiful, wonderful things, but ask the tough questions, because they always avoid the tough questions. And Trudeau and Freeland and Pierre, they're all magnificent at it. Watch CPAC, watch them during question period. Watch how they will take a question, not answer it, and in fact bring up something else that is actually more important to them than actually protecting Canadians and looking out for your sovereignty. None of the career politicians are looking out for that. And maybe I shouldn't say none. Maybe there's a small percentage, 1 or 2 that are sitting in those seats that are looking out for you. So next election, and we know it's coming because Trudeau just announced he's going to run. We know Pierre is peacocking around like he's going to run. Derek Sloan was asked the question the other day, "Hey, are you going to run?" He's already looking and starting to ramp up. PPC Party are having all of their fundraiser galas right now. So everybody is ramping up. So something big is coming, and we know Melissa Atwater's petition, sponsored by Michelle Ferrari, petition 4701. It's about having an election, recalling the Trudeau government. So guys, get ready. It is not time to take your foot off the gas pedal. It is not time. Question hard. When you run into these politicians, don't yell at them, "You're a murderer," or "Fuck Trudeau." Screw all that. Now's the time to come with your little cue cards with the questions in hand. Now's the time to ask the questions and hold them to account. Use their statements against them, use their policies against them, use the bills that they've introduced into legislation against them, and ask the real critical questions. Now, more than ever, you need to be involved with what's going on in your country before we lose it. Voila.
True story. Yeah, remember, they're in the Privy Council. So we need to put a bug in your ear because we did a prepping show. If you've seen Leave the World Behind, they dropped pamphlets. They dropped pamphlets over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And they did that to tell them get out of the area because we're gonna do something horrible. And
they did.
I believe Leave the World Behind is a digital form of one of those pamphlets. I think that was most people have gotten to the point where they think that's more of a warning than anything. I think 2024 is going to be some tough times coming up, and you gotta keep a positive mind. There's so prep.
Well, and Nancy said they've bought the media. They are using the media to drop their truth bombs.
Mm-hmm.
So they're telling us what they're going to do without actually telling us what they're going to do. Unless it's Klaus Schwab or Yuval Harari, they make no bones about what they're going to do. But the rest of them are a little more subtle. Sometimes they come right out. Other times they make a movie to tell you. Or they write a song to tell you. Listen and watch and question.
Right.
Trust your gut.
So on that happy note,
let's play our happy video again as we say goodbye to everybody.
Just in case you didn't see it the first time. Remember, be this guy.
Shoot 'em down, turn around, come on, Moni. Hey, you give me love and I feel alright now. You gotta talk and turn and feel alright, and feel alright. I say yeah. 'Cause you make me feel so good.
Good night. Have a great weekend, everybody.